What's up, and welcome back to the Kind of Funny Screencast. Of course, I'm Tim Geddes, and I'm joined by the one and only Anthony Carboni.
What's up, everybody? I want a space hoodie and a button-up shirt so bad after that episode. It's a hoodie, but it's also like a tweed sport coat, and it's, where did that guy come from? He wasn't there the whole time.
He wasn't there the whole time.
They added that guy.
Of course, we have Pixel Circus's own Saige Ryan.
Known you for a long time, Boba.
I have a feeling you're going to be saying Boba that way for the rest of your life.
For the rest of my life. I've known Boba Fett my whole life. How could they do this to me?
And rounding out the group, the one and only sad boy, Barrett Courtney.
Tim, it's a sad day today. We have to, give respect to someone who lived a long life. Rest in peace, Cad Bane, 62 BBY to 9
Yes.
ABY. Rest in peace, my boy.
I love that you prepared this.
It made me, it made me sad to see him go, but I love that, Filoni and Favreau got to do the showdown between these two characters that Filoni has been wanting to do for a long time. So
Yeah, you two prequel boys, Tim Geddes and Barrett Courtney. How did it feel to get your Cad Bane, just to get your Cad Bane taken from you?
Well, I mean, I want to clear, I wouldn't call myself a prequel boy in comparison to Barrett.
I am in comparison to Barrett. No,
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And with all of that, we'll get into the Cad Bane stuff.
We all want to say a few words. We can have a little eulogy.
Exactly.
I'll start by saying I'll miss his little mouth.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we all want to twitch our lips in respect for his weird Cad Bane lips.
I'm just happy that we got to see, 2, 3, 4, 7 more times him slowly look up at the camera underneath the brim of his hat.
It's so cool. It's so cool.
Something happened. But of course, this is the Kind of Funny Screencast where each and every week we get together to come together, talk about movies, TV trailers, movie trailers, all that stuff. This is the finale of the Book of Boba Fett that we're talking about. You can watch the show.
Tim. It's the Book of Boba Fett.
Boba Fett, yes. YouTube.com/
Known you for a long time. Boba.
Kind of Funny, or roosterteeth.com. You can also search your favorite podcast service for Kind of Funny Screencast, and we'll be right there for you. If you wanted to get the show ad-free and you want to watch live as we record it, you got to go to patreon.com/kindoffunny, just like Gordon McGuire, Molecule, and at James Davis Makes have done. They are our Patreon producers, and we appreciate them very much. Because of that, they're not going to have to hear the ads later for Chime and ExpressVPN, but we'll get to all of that later. We need to start off with our thoughts on the Book of Boba Fett finale. We've been here together from the beginning of this journey, this beautiful panel, this beautiful crew. I'm sad that this is the end of our journey for now. I'm sure we will return at some point. But I want to start with you, Saige. What did you think about this?
I loved this episode. I was of the opinion up to this point that there was no way that the battle itself should happen this episode. And when it started, I was like, but there's not enough time, and I want it to be this thing we've been leading up to. But I actually felt very fulfilled by it all being done. I really enjoyed it. I think that all of the things came together. It was as much an episode of The Mandalorian once again. I think all of my favorite parts were Mandalorian based. And I think I finally, by this episode, am okay with it.
Barrett, let's bring you in.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the finale, and kind of like speaking of the show as a whole, I think it's a messy show that did some cool things, and I think the second half of the show was where the cool things finally started to happen. We got a lot of payoffs with little things here and there and big things here and there, and yeah, I found myself I was smiling the entire time, and even though there were still aspects that I was like, I don't know if I would have ended, with these couple of scenes. I'm interested in what the hell that teaser was. A couple of things making me scratch my head. I was along for the ride, and there were times where I was like, oh my God, they can't get out of this. And then they bring something back that I'm like, oh shit, of course that's going to come back, and things like that. And interesting that there are some things set up that like didn't follow through in some of the action. But overall, I really enjoyed the episode. I think it was like a messy setup of a season that, for me at least, stuck the landing.
Carboni.
Yeah, I got to agree. If this episode, if If every episode felt like this episode, we would have had one of the greatest Star Wars things in the history of Star Wars on our hands. I think Jon Favreau stepped in to kind of pilot this finale. You know, anytime the showrunner writes an episode, he's on set, and they really nailed this one. And so many themes and so many things about the characters. There were moments of subtext between characters in this episode that were never brought up before, but felt right in the moment. And they were there. They were there just waiting to be brought to the surface. And I think it really just kind of took the entire creative team being there on set, powering through this episode to make it happen. I'm speculating, of course. I don't know that they weren't all on set all the time, but knowing how TV shows run, I feel like Favreau was pretty present for this one. Another thing that I thought was very interesting that I want to bring up just here right off the jump, when you compare this to the Robert Rodriguez episode, you know, this one was Robert Rodriguez. When you compare it to the Robert Rodriguez episode with the chase, the one that we're all kind of like, that looked weird. I don't know about that. What's with the pacing? Something occurred to me that has never occurred to me before. I think for the first time, we are seeing Star Wars rub up against its budget. I think just like any other TV show, they had to kind of dispense the money between different episodes. And I don't think Boba Fett got to be as expensive as other Star Wars stuff. And I think that might be at the root of a lot of things we've been thinking feel weird about this show.
That's really
Putting it out there,
interesting.
let that
Yeah.
simmer.
Yeah, that's a very good point. But some would say, then don't do it. You know what I mean? I'm coming in a lot less hot than you guys seem to be. I was pretty bummed out by this episode, and it sucks because that's not to say there wasn't a lot that I enjoyed. There definitely was. This was an hour-long episode that had a ton of cool moments. I don't think it ever had a single moment that perfectly hit where I'm like, that was incredibly awesome. I think there was a lot of things I was like, I really like this and I really like this. And I think that overall, it could have added up to me being a little bit more forgiving if I thought they stuck the landing with the storytelling and the characters and the leaving me interested in more, which I very much am not right now. Like, this is the least excited I've been for new Star Wars in a while. And that bums me out because I feel like they kind of dead-ended themselves on a lot of really cool ideas that they set up in this season. I don't like how they handled Boba. Now that we've seen the whole show, I am not interested in his storyline at all of where they're going with it. And it kind of feels like I agree with Saige that this war, we've been talking about it the last couple weeks, we're all like, how are they going to pull it off? I think that they pulled it off, but I think they pulled it off in a weird don't show way, and then a show don't tell way, never quite getting that balance correct, where it didn't feel earned, but it felt earned because they told us it was earned. And I didn't like that. And then they delivered with the action, but I feel like the action kind of is best exemplified by that dude spinning to shoot, where it's like style over substance, but even the style's not that stylish and kind of
it was
feels
such an
off to me.
unnecessary spin.
It was an unnecessary spin, and honestly, I loved it.
Yeah,
But that unnecessary spin.
Look, here's me.
I'll tell you what,
hold on, I want to
see-
say this real quick. Like
no,
that.
I want to say this real quick. I saw that guy spinning, and I was like, that guy was like, this might be the last time I'm in Star Wars. He added that spin in. He definitely added that spin in. Don't you think?
They should have reshot
He was like,
it
let
then.
me do a spin here.
Yeah, but let the man do a spin. I get that, but like make it look more visually interesting and make just a little bit more sense. But like Saige, to your point, I enjoy it and it's fun. I just miss the days when I expected more from Star Wars than just kind of making me giggle because it's silly. Like Star Wars always has been silly and had its moments, but it also had a lot of other things that I was really looking forward to, like deep storytelling and all that. And I feel like this isn't really delivering that for me and teases it in so many ways, then rips it away. And I just don't like that pacing. And I know that I just sound like a grumpy old man, but it's like grumpy old men are watching this show too. And in a lot of ways, the show was designed for grumpy old men. So
Star Wars designed for grumpy old men.
I'm bummed. The thing that bums me out the most is we're in this present. It's not a future of IP cinematic universe storytelling, whether it's TV, comics, movies, it's all connected. And we have so many things to compare this to. And I feel like this it committed the cardinal sin of not standing alone and not building up what's next in an interesting way. Sometimes you watch MCU projects and it's like, oh, well, that one was just to set up the next thing. And it's like, cool, but it did that, so we give that credit. Or, hey, this one stands alone, didn't really do much for the future, but it did something by itself. I don't think this was a good Boba Fett story, and I don't think this was a good pushing Star Wars forward story. And it bums me out because comparing it to something like Peacemaker right now, that is absolutely incredible and killing it as a standalone thing, that we're not waiting episode to episode for who's going to show up next. And I feel like in this show, we weren't doing that. And then they delivered that. And then they just didn't do great with that. And I think that's my thing. It's like, that's the cardinal sin of like, whoa, you really gave us more than we were expecting, but then kind of just dropped all our favorite toys in a way that wasn't satisfying. And it reminds me, and I'm saying this, and I'm going to stick to it. This episode, and this episode combining all of this season so far, it reminds me of Rise of Skywalker, where yes, it makes sense. The things that they say, they're like, well, this sets up this, and that's how this happens. It just doesn't make it good. It just makes it work. And it reminds me of Fast 9 and what they did to my boy Han.
Now, okay.
How are you going to explain that?
Hold on.
Thomas
And I'm going to
Hold
disagree
on.
on a
That's-
couple of things.
Yeah, I'm
and
going to
layers
disagree
here,
on
because
everything you
also,
just said in that
Rise of
last two
Skywalker
sentences.
didn't make sense, and that was the problem. I don't agree that Rise of Skywalker did things that were in any way logical and sensible, but just not enjoyable. I think that Rise of Skywalker, my biggest gripes with it, and as someone who still will sit and enjoy the film, because I'm a very optimistic Star Wars viewer. The problems with Rise of Skywalker are blatant choices that disrespected what we know about the world, right?
I feel
There
that
are
way about
times
this.
where they looked at us as fans and were like, I know what you want and I don't care, right? It was the
Yeah.
moments like taking Rose out of the story and bringing in someone else to do something so similar. Those were the things that to me were like offensive about Rise of Skywalker as a fan. And I don't see that in this at all.
They
I
took
think that
Boba
they
out of half the
fulfilled.
show.
But that's
the
not this
exact same thing.
episode. That's a complaint about 2 episodes ago.
But it's a complaint about that's what I'm saying. It's like now
Yeah.
that this episode happened, it's a complaint about the show as a whole of
Yeah.
what they've been building up to get to where we're at now. Where what has Boba done? Boba walked around the entire season just, this is my city. I need to protect the city. I don't fucking believe you. Why is this your city? Why does this make any sense?
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from. As a cohesive whole, obviously we've talked about this. This series could have been better. There are things that they could have. For instance, hey man, like we said, it would have been great if the shooting of the Marshal had happened midway through this series. The intro of Cad Bane had happened
Made an
midway.
inciting incident.
If we had kind of
If Cad
cross-pollinated
Bane
all
had
of
been
these-
the one to kill the Tuskens,
all of
Connect
these things could have,
Bane.
all of these things could have been cross-pollinated, right? In a way that built it up more and made it more of a story.
Mhm.
We also, with regards to Cad Bane, we got a lot of mention of their history together in this episode, but it was never really, if you haven't watched all of the Clone Wars stuff,
Right.
you don't know that. And so for Cad Bane to show up and be like, I've known you since you were a kid, it's like, okay, well now you're just throwing that in. They did miss some chances to really like sink their teeth into these characters and make them
tiny
feel
little teeth.
I agree.
their tiny little teeth and their weird lips into these characters to make them feel more important to this world. I get that. I totally get that.
Mhm.
But I think this episode, in a lot of ways, redeemed a lot of that because it did make reference to those things. It did try to show some of these things that we wish had been themes beforehand. When the mods and the people from Freetown have like sort of a classist thing against each other. Like, that's great. That could have just been brought up. It was so easy to bring up in the moment. There
Yeah.
could have been a few more moments when when Din was there talking to everybody in Freetown. They
Mhm.
could have literally said, "Fuck the city. We don't like people in the city." Like, there are so many ways that could have been like a little
I-
more cross-pollinated.
I agree. And I think that time was available to them. As much as I enjoyed the Tusken Raider story, I thought that was going to be the story. And then it turned out it was not. I think all of the time that we spent getting to know the Tusken village, we could have spent getting to know the city instead. And that would have made this entire thing much more interconnected and much more cohesive and generally got me a better buy-in on who these people are in the city. And why Boba Fett gives a shit. I
Do
love
we
the
think-
idea of Boba Fett giving a shit.
Yeah.
I really want to see more of why.
Well, Cad Bane says, like, you're trying to go straight, you're trying to do this. And that's stuff that's been, like, alluded to. But, like, we weren't really made to feel it. It's like you said, Tim, like, when we finally understood what was going on with Boba in terms of subtext, we went off to follow Din for 2 episodes. And it's like, hey, if this stuff had been interspersed together, if you let me tell you something. If you had put Grogu, if you had front-loaded some Grogu into this series, I think more people would have stuck around for the series, right? There were ways to do this throughout.
Damn, there was some good Grogu.
God damn, there was some good Grogu.
There was some really good Grogu.
Tim, you got to admit that there was some great Mando and Grogu in this episode.
God. No, that was absolutely great. Of course, we love that. Like, Grogu being cute is one of those things that at this point is a pillar of Star Wars. It is something I look forward to. But we're at the point now that we've seen it for 3 seasons of TV shows. So it's like, you got to do something new with it. And I thought that was great. But how many times are we going to see him use the Force to save the day in the exact
Grogu,
same way?
More like growth goo, because that character is going through some changes, Timothy.
Also, I will say, if somebody's complaint about Star Wars is how many times are they going to use the Force to save the day, this is not the franchise.
No, but use the Force in the same way that Neo used the Matrix in the Matrix Resurrections, where it's always just the exact same thing. And like, I'm fine with it. I just think that we didn't need 2 scenes in this one episode of him doing the same thing. Like, this fight went on 15, 20 minutes too long of just repeating the same things over and over and over from a slightly different alley.
Well, one thing that's going to happen, I will say this, one thing that's going to happen if you get Robert Rodriguez, Jon Favreau, and Dave Filoni into the same room is they're going to talk about Godzilla a lot. Like, they're going to talk about kaiju a lot. These are dudes who love kaiju.
And boy, that kaiju.
Dude, that last 10 minutes was just Robert Rodriguez getting to make his King Kong.
Yeah,
and like,
literally that shot at the end where he's like on the tower and stuff. Like, I absolutely adored that.
I get what you're saying. I think something that occurred to me, and I was talking to a friend about this last night, very late. They're clearly masquerading one long series as a bunch of different shows. They don't want you to show up for the Book of Boba Fett and the Mandalorian and Ahsoka and all. They just want you to know that Star Wars is on every week.
But even if that's the case, and I think that, and because that's how I watch these shows, like, that's why, like, at the end of the day, I'm not really that upset that Boba Fett wasn't in the show this much. I'm upset with what they did with his time in the show. But watching The Mandalorian and watching Grogu, like, that's what I'm here for. Watching the Luke and Ahsoka stuff, that's what I'm here for. And I just feel like to end season 2, if we're watching this as one show, not as, Book of Boba Fett's its own separate thing, and even if you do it that way, we have this whole 2-season arc of getting Mandalorian and Grogu to connect and then him having to say goodbye. And then immediately he's back. And whether you count that as we're watching one show or we're watching 2 different shows, it is a bizarre storytelling choice.
No, it's a Star Wars storytelling choice. That's his Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, that's his Empire Strikes Back choice. Yep. Yeah.
Remember that this show, like, all of these shows,
this bad stuff then.
But it's not bad stuff.
Yeah, what are you talking about? It's bad. Like, Empire, like, the struggle that Luke goes through to go to Dagobah, and then, like, leave Yoda for after, like, what, 3 days maybe?
Yeah.
And, like, that
his
is,
struggle
like,
was
one
putting
of the
Yoda
best,
on his back.
Yeah, yeah. And, like, to have Grogu go through that same scenario and choose the same thing that Luke chose, like, I thought that was really cool. I don't think that's a bad story.
I do want to say, the only people want to talk about how Luke is not characterized correctly
because he's not
in the sequel films, but I think he is. I honestly disagree a little more with Luke here because I think Luke would be more understanding because Luke did the same thing. I think the thing that's problematic about this is Grogu says, "Hey man, I got to go save my friends." Yoda said the same thing to Luke. Luke can't be like, well, you can't come back. No, of course you can.
It's like he had absolutely no self-reflection on, like, the events that he went through in the original trilogy.
I appreciate.
I think what we're doing in a long run is trying to show that Luke is not learning, even though it seems like Luke learned. Luke is not learning. Luke has to become the flawed Jedi teacher that ruins this school because his job was not to continue the Jedi the way it is. So I think we're sort of seeing that.
That's my problem with it, though, is that I want this clear because I really hate this Luke conversation where it has to be binary, where I'm on this side or this side. I really like where Luke is at in Last Jedi. I like him that he failed and all that stuff. I don't like the fact that he turned into that guy this quickly, where it's like this with Luke Skywalker, from what we know of the original trilogy, and then going into this, which was only a couple years after, how Disney has handled Luke Skywalker's character immediately after Return of the Jedi, of turning him into a Jedi Council prequel era Jedi, I hate it. I hate that choice, and it is what gets us to where we are in Last Jedi 30 years later. And I'm like, come on, that is, I think, incongruent to who Luke is at the end of Jedi. And it's like, how did he immediately read some books and be like, I'm going back to all the dumbass bad decisions? When I say the bad Star Wars stuff, that's what I'm talking about, is that him giving Grogu this choice and then literally sending him in a fucking X-Wing Uber. Like, it's just, I don't know, man. Why'd they do that? To get him back to the Mandalorian? Because that's what the people want to see on Disney Plus. They want to see the Mandalorian with this baby Grogu.
No,
I think it's pride, and it's a story of pride and power, right? Like, it's a story of the power of the Jedi corrupting and making people not see things correctly. Do I wish that Luke had just been like, okay, man, go save your friends. I get that's what you have to do. That's not my fight, so I'm not going with you. But I understand. And then to have Grogu leave and then have Luke be like even more determined to find his first student, then I think would have been a better sort of, this fits with the story. So I get what you're saying. As far as Grogu being like, I got to go see Dad. Baby, he's got to go see Dad.
And
Dad's in trouble.
I don't agree with they send him back just because that's what the people want to see on Disney Plus. I do think, unfortunately, with this show, and I think I've said this before, it's the Iron Man 2, where there's like a lot of things that they needed to set up for future stuff, and I think Filoni wanted Grogu and Mando to be back at the beginning of season 3 for a reason, for a specific story reason. I think he wanted at the beginning of Mando season 3, or by the next show or whatever, to explain, hey, Boba Fett's got this, army of mods, and he has taken over Jabba's palace, and he's kind of like watching over Tatooine for a reason for later. And I think, unfortunately, yes, like the steps the entire team took to tell that story and to tell those things to set up later stuff did misstep here. And I think there's some odd choices here and there, but again, I wouldn't chalk it up to, oh yeah, that's just what the people want to see. I don't think Filoni would do something.
I never think the Mando and Grogu stuff, as far as characterization and story, so far for me, that has never been the weak part of this stuff. I think the weak part of this stuff was, hey man, Cad Bane came out of nowhere and you really could have built it up. Hey man, the Pikes and the Syndicate sort of came out of nowhere, even though you had been mentioning them. The idea that the Syndicate had set up this biker gang and they were the ones that killed the Tuskens, like, that sort of came out of nowhere. There was a lot of stuff that came out of nowhere to make this episode work at the end, and I think because of it, this episode did work for me. But
before we move on, though,
let
me tell you about our sponsors. Shout out to Chime for sponsoring this episode. New year, new you. Maybe a you who leaves behind things that don't serve you, like those dang overdraft fees. When your checking account balance is running low, the last thing you need is an overdraft fee. But with Chime, an award-winning app and debit card, you can save that hard-earned cash money without paying overdraft fees. Eligible members can overdraft up to $200 on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals with absolutely no overdraft fees. Make your first good decision in 2022 and join over 10 million people using Chime. Sign up only takes 2 minutes and doesn't affect your credit score. You can get started at chime.com/KFgames. That's CHIME.com/KFgames. Banking services provided by and debit card issued by the Bancorp Bank or Stride Bank N.A. members FDIC. Eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Overdraft only applies to debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. Limits start at $20 and may be increased up to $200 by Chime. See chime.com/spotme and go to chime.com/KFgames to get started. This episode is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Look, I get it. You don't watch porn, so maybe you're just paying attention to this ad for, a friend. But with everything going on in the world, governments have increased surveillance. They're using your devices to track your location, movements, and in a lot of places, your internet activity. ExpressVPN reroutes your internet connection through a secure encrypted server so you can surf the web anonymously. Newsflash, incognito mode is a sham. Your ISP can still see every single site you visit. But with one click of a button, ExpressVPN keeps others from seeing all the freaky stuff you've been looking at. Yeah, talking about you, Nick Scarpino. We've been using ExpressVPN for a long time. It's been keeping me safe, keeping me secure. I just feel better being out on the internet, knowing that ExpressVPN has my back. Protect your privacy today and get 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. Visit expressvpn.com/kindafunny. That's expressvpn.com/kindafunny for 3 months free with a 1-year package. Visit expressvpn.com/kindafunny to learn more. sorry. I thought there was a period before that, but go for it.
No, I was going to say, that did make this episode work for me. But it does. I think what you're saying, Tim, and I think what I understand is it does put into sharper relief the pacing problems of the rest of the series. For this episode to be good, they had to highlight some of the stuff that was not working. And I get why that is like something that becomes frustrating and a little unsatisfying when you're watching this finale. But I think this episode was good.
I want to talk about some of the parts I really liked. I would love to do that. I think there's so many really good, fun moments that were the right amount of fan service for me. Obviously, cuteness is a large portion of those. For instance, Anthony and I already talked about this morning. It was like the first thing I had to say when I saw him was the pulling of his little sweater to show the armor underneath. And then just saying, "You got this shirt."
You got
he
the
called
shirt.
it a shirt.
Yeah, I know.
Calling it
You
a
got
shirt.
the shirt I sent you. You were at camp and you got the camp thing I sent you at camp.
I was fully expecting Grogu to get that. That was like one of the things I was hinting at, where like that felt like a Chekhov's gun kind of situation where they set up that he has this shirt. I thought he was going to get shot at some point in the show, and then to be like, "Oh, but he's got the shirt. He's okay." You know, like I was totally expecting.
He got hit with the big rivet from the Scorponok, where like like it hits him when he uses the Force. He's like, "Oh shit, too much Force," and like the shirt protects him there. I also want to say I thought it was hilarious that Pelimato's rickshaw. Number one, I fucking love Pelimato.
Oh,
okay. I love Pelimato.
This episode made me dislike her more.
I love that Pelimato's rickshaw moves faster than any vehicle in that car chase 3 episodes ago. One droid just rolling as fast as he can. So good.
Flintstoning it.
I really like how Boba calls Black Chrysanthemum Santo. Mm-hmm. That was a very fun little thing where I'm like, cool, there's history here I actually believe in, and also it's funny calling that guy Santo.
There was some good like, when you want to talk about Chekhov's gun, there were some good fake outs, right? Like I had to stop and think about where we were timeline wise, and I'm like, does Black Chrysanthemum die here? Like, are we past all the stuff that we've seen? Is he done?
Yeah,
like,
there were some big Black Chrysanthemum's gonna die moments in this episode, and it happened more than once. Where I was like, "Oh, this is the one." Yeah. Oh no, the axe in the back, it's happening.
And the bait and switch with where he tells Santo like, "Hey, I'm gonna let you sit in the Bacta tank," and then at the end to be like, "Yeah, the Bacta tank is taken," and then you see Black Chrysanthemum walk up, and you're like, "What?" And then you're like,
"Yeah."
And then you're like, "What? The galaxy's handsomest cowboy is back?"
It's my boy. He's alive.
Yeah.
See, and it's things like that where I am excited to see like what they're building up to and what to see next, because it's like you're gonna use that as your teaser for like the post credits, and because that makes me think of like he's gonna be bigger in some way, shape, or form, and I'm fascinated to see like where they go with him, because I thought that was such a strange choice, but I feel like they're doing it for a reason.
Well, I think
because Jon Favreau historically loves cowboys and aliens. Now available on VOD.
For me, it was when him and Fennec were walking out, and he was like, "This is not for us. Like, we are not fit to run Tatooine." And then it's like, if not us, then who? And then clearly, it's Cowboy.
It's Cowboy.
What color scooter is he gonna get? He's a mod boy.
I can't wait to
He's
find
gonna
out.
Be a mod boy.
He is going to be a
Yo.
mod boy. I enjoyed that very much. I'm very intrigued to see what that looks like because I love a mod cowboy. That's awesome.
Okay, so clearly Robert Rodriguez wants to make a series out of these cool mods on their cool space Vespas.
I would love that. And I think there's a place they can go from it that could be way cooler than what they've done here. They haven't set up anything cool enough, but like the story of like a modded community of like half cyborg people on Tatooine, I'm so down.
I listen, as much as I love a space Vespa, and I do, and Barrett, you saw last night, the only thing I tweeted when I was like watching the episode was I want a space Vespa so bad.
Yeah.
It's weird that the cyberpunk aesthetic people go with like a nice, clean, classic Vespa. That is a little like weird to me. Like you expect them to be on more Mad Maxy kind of looking stuff. But I guess everybody else in Star Wars is on Mad Max looking stuff. So that's what makes them weird and
They're
different.
rebels, man.
They're
It's
rebels, baby.
counterculture to
rebel.
wear a peacoat.
But listen, oh my God, where did that beautiful man come from? Because
He was
wasn't
there the whole
right?
time. No,
Was
he's
he
100%
really?
there. I've absolutely taken note of his peacoat before.
Wow.
They gave him some shots this time.
They gave him
around,
the
though.
shots, man. Those eyebrows, dude.
Good
He's
for
got
him.
that button-up shirt with like the cool patterning
Yeah.
on it, and it's like, man,
If
I
we
hope
if
that
we had to
becomes
give
available
someone
at
best
Galaxy's
look
Edge.
today, it was him. He had the best look.
Absolutely.
Please. And his beautifully coiffed hair. And I don't think he ever hit anybody. I think they only showed him almost get shot. I think they really they really hammered home that he's just there for looks. I love the mod gang. I thought it was cool that they were there. The family's turning is something that once again was very cool, where they're all just like, we're just gonna hang out in these other territories and see what's up. And what's up is like the family's turning. Great moment. I thought that was cool. Could have been set up once again.
Yeah.
But it led us somewhere that I really loved, which is Fennec Shand doing ninja murders
Thank you,
Of the
finally.
entire syndicate, including, can I tell you, thank you, somebody, for thinking about Ithorians and their weird long necks and being like, wouldn't it look cool to just choke an Ithorian?
Yeah. And it was almost like, because she hasn't been able to do a lot of things cool this season, being the like other like main character of the show, I was almost convinced it wasn't her at the end. I was
That's
like,
so funny.
I was like, who could it be? And then it ended up being Fennec. I was like, fuck yeah, finally, we got to see her do the thing that people constantly say she does in the universe of Star Wars. It was fucking rad.
The moment where she saves the mods and they have that little back and forth where she's like, oh, etiquette, or like, oh, politeness. Like, I like that. Like, I was just like, yeah.
Like, oh, you're a real character. Like,
we're getting there. We're getting there. We're getting there.
You don't just sit. That's it. No,
You don't
no,
just-
you're
you
actually
don't just-
cool.
You don't just lean and eat and give exposition in a cool way.
I wish the entire series they had been doing that, where people just
Yes.
get picked off by somebody off camera and then you come to know that means it's Fennec. I love that they're not showing her doing it. I love that every time that she absolutely wrecked shop in this episode, it was just like pink, 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 and then she walked out, because that's how like she became what
Stealthy.
she is. She's so stealthy and like so cool.
Yeah, that was great. And I'll
not
say this.
flashy.
The other reason why I think we're going to see way more of these mods, Star Wars loves a British brunette.
It's true.
Hey, same.
It's true.
Star Wars loves a 20-something British brunette. Like,
Yeah.
Drash is being set up to be something.
I was
For
surprised
sure.
she wasn't featured more throughout the show, because I'm right there with you. Like, when we first saw her, I thought we were gonna get like, oh, she's about to become the next Boba.
Yeah,
like,
and I wish that she had had a bigger moment. They were really setting up her and the Freetown girl to be the ones to take out this big droid, right? And then it kind of just turns into Boba and the Rancor coming in and doing it again. And I thought, like, okay, cool. Like, I won't argue against,
I mean,
you know,
Chekhov's Rancor. You have to call
Yeah.
it Chekhov's Rancor.
Chekhov's Rancor, which we already saw fight one robot a scene before, and like it felt like it was going
That's
on
what
at the
I'm
same
saying.
time, where it was like, all right, we have Rancor fighting robot, and then we have the townspeople fighting the other robot, and that was like one of the few disappointments that I had, where I was like, you were setting up like they were getting like a height advantage and all of this stuff, and they were gonna prepare, and then it kind of just turned into the Rancor coming to save the day again, and I was like,
Even if the Rancor couldn't, like, that's the thing, like, even if they couldn't, like, I think sometimes Star Wars gets caught up in Star Wars rules, which is good because you want things to be consistent. but like we have set up, you cannot take out a Scorpion droid. You just can't. Those shields, like nobody's getting through those shields. But I love that they kind of showed Chrysanthemum being like, I could punch it. Like if I got real close, I could get in slowly and punch it. So we got that set up, and I love that we set that up. But then another thing that we were setting up that paid off, but could have paid off a little differently, was the Darksaber, right? So if we have a Rancor, if we have Boba take out one Scorpion on his own with a Rancor, we could have had Din, who's been fighting against the Darksaber and trying to figure out how to wield it, while everybody is weakening this Scorpion droid and doing like working together. Like Din could have come in from behind with that Darksaber. I also thought Grogu was going to pick up the Darksaber at one point. Y'all put that in my head. And then I was like, wait a minute, it's going to happen.
Dude,
It's
I'm
going to
telling
be
you,
weird.
Yo, I'm calling it now. I called it before, but I'm calling it now, especially because they've reunited them. It's inevitable.
It's
That
inevitable.
Darksaber is going to
I wish it
Grogu. It's
happened.
his.
I just wish it happened. I wish the Darksaber had been helpful for anybody, really. Even if it was Din, like I wish the Darksaber had been the answer there. When he pulled it out, I was like, "Oh right!" For a moment, I had forgotten about it, and then it was like, "No," and I was like, "Ah."
Well, he did get a good stabby in on a couple stabbies in on that.
But I was
one.
over it by then.
Yeah.
And he's
so
not.
the
Here's the
thing
thing
about
about
the fight.
Din. Yeah.
Go for it, Carboni.
I was just gonna say the thing about Din is like they're not setting up Din to be the wielder of the Darksaber. Din should not wind up with the Darksaber.
Yeah.
I think it do go to Grogu.
It is, man.
Din's not
There's
very
no
good.
other choice. But
There
what
are
I
plenty
what
of
I
other
liked,
choices.
what I liked about the fight scene for a while, and then it kind of had a reset point that I stopped liking it. Something that Barrett was kind of just alluding to there is I really enjoyed. So Mandalorian season 1 and season 2 were very much video game stories just told on TV, right? Where it's like, cool, bunch of side quests. We're going to gather the armor. We're going to gather the weapons. We're going to do all that, set up the big plot points. And then here we are. This was a video game ass fight. And I thought that was cool. Droids coming with the shields and they're just blasting them. And we're watching like the blasters aren't working. Why are you still doing that? But then you're like, well, if I was playing games, I would still be shooting them because like that's just how video games work. And like all the just random set pieces they had felt very QTE video game fight, and in a way that I really enjoyed. But then at some point, like we had, Grogu coming in using the Force against him. We had a Rancor come in, fuck one up. All that stuff was cool. It kind of felt like the player died and then reset and had to rewatch the cutscene and then replay the same fight again. Because I swear to God, they just did the same shit over and over and over, like for the second half of the fight. And I'm like, all right, that was not cool the second time that it was the first time, Grogu, or Rancor Man, or just like the list goes on for the sets, but I don't know.
Yeah, I can see that. And and like I said, you've got two Scorpion and you've got two parallel stories and two parallel threads going on. There could have been some differentiation in how they were destroyed. I think it was some of the best looking. This is why I think about, we're really thinking about budgeting now. This episode looked way better than
Agreed.
any other episode on Tatooine.
I was impressed like how consistently good the Rancor looked throughout the entire thing.
Everything looked really, really gorgeous. And like you could tell there was just like money put into these fights in a way where I was like, this feels very Star Wars. I think the train fight felt very Star Wars too, in a way where it was like there are only a few of us and we're infiltrating something, and that's very Star Wars, where it's like it's the sort of the suspense of like we're all pinned down. How do we get through this?
Right.
But man, I was waiting for like a super huge action piece, and like I'm glad that we got it, even though, like you're saying, it could have had some more variation in how things got done.
I almost feel like they just over delivered. Like I feel like I'd be much higher on this episode being a just pure action episode if they just did less of what they had, like edit it just a bit more and cut it down, because like a lot of the stuff was very cool. It just kind of outstayed its welcome for me. And I think that the longer we were in it, I think it started to show its cracks, despite, I agree with you, still looking very, very good, like quality wise.
Can I tell you something that I thought was hilarious and fun? Sometimes they decide that they need to create Star Wars things that Star Wars people say. One of my favorite things is,
I haven't noted this.
Well, if that isn't the Quacta calling the Stifling slimy,
Let's
I
love that. Now that's not the first time we've heard that line. They use it in Mandalorian season 2.
That's so funny.
But quactas and stiflings or stifflings.
Stifling, yeah.
That's not a thing. That
That's
wasn't a thing
nonsense.
until somebody said it in Mandalorian 2. But guess what? It's a thing now because someone said it twice. The other thing that they do that's hilarious is when Cad Bane is talking to the Syndicate and the Ithorian is like, "Oh, we want to make sure everything turns out all right." He's like, "Oh, it will if you've got the 2 stomachs for it." And it's like, you don't have to say
Nah.
that. You don't have to say
but
that.
it was so good. I loved it.
It's
Kinda liked that one,
as we
actually.
all know, you who has 2 stomachs. It's like, no, it's a turn of phrase. It's a metaphorical stomach. It doesn't matter.
Maybe the solution, maybe we could have trimmed that line. I'm going to suggest a rewrite here, just a quick trim, is just the stomachs for it. Just make it a plural,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
2.
Stomachs.
Maybe just if you've got the stomachs for it. And maybe that's
like if
become
I was
normal
talking
because
to a
there's so many
cow.
species that have multiple stomachs.
Yes,
And I was
yes.
like, I don't know, like the cow doesn't, and it's like the cow looks spooked. It's like, yeah, I don't think the cow has the 5 stomachs for this. No.
Really quick, I
Weird.
just want to give a moment. Also,
But I
rest
love
in
it.
peace, the Gomorians.
Yeah,
Oh,
really
I
sad.
would
I
love
was
to
really
talk
sad.
about the Gomorians.
Yeah, what are your feelings, Sage?
Okay, the Gomorians I love in this series, mostly because they do nothing but run around like little toddlers. They've got like thick baby thighs. Like,
Yes.
look, I am
Tommy
a person
Pickles
with
status.
I'm a person with no instincts. I want to be as far away from children as possible. But like, even I want to squish a like pudding bag of a baby. And that's how I feel about the Gomorians, and I know I'm not supposed to, but thank you, what a gift.
They're in their little pig diapers.
They're in their little pig diapers, and they got such like thick little fucking sausage thighs, and it's so funny to me that they're so adorable as these like brooding men that they're supposed to be. When they
My
fell
favorite part of
off of it,
Star
I was
Wars.
still looking at all their like squishy little like
And they
baby
linger
fat
on
things.
it a little too long. I'm going to say
They
that
did, it was
shot
hard.
of
No.
them falling, and I was like,
rough.
Jesus Christ, man.
There were
were
2 minutes in this
shiny.
episode. Yeah, there were
They
2
were
moments in this
shiny
episode
and
I thought were
chubby all the
brutal.
way down.
They were.
My favorite thing in Star Wars is that you can watch a pig fight a bulldog and they're standing like a man. Like,
Yeah.
The Gomorians, I think, are interesting because they've had real bulk and skull energy the whole series.
Mhm.
Like Boba Fett comes in and he's like, "I'm your boss now. What do you think of that?" And they go, boop, "That's okay with me." Like, you can almost see them being like bulk and skull the whole time, and I was sad to see them go. In all
Yeah,
honesty.
I
I was
wanted them
too.
to be a part. Like it was funny because I don't even know if they meant it, but like when the crew gets together before we kind of leave Boba on Tatooine, I was like, man, I miss those Gomorian boys hanging out with the crew there.
And
know,
it felt like they
this-
were innocents.
Yeah, totally. I'm honestly shocked that they were killed. Like, I really thought they were going to survive. And even with how this episode was paced, like going back to just the way that this show has been oddly paced, and this episode in particular, I think exemplifies it for me of the way that they would show characters and where they're at, like where they introduced Grogu in this episode and then where they chose to bring him in, I thought was just really weird and bizarre. And a big part of that was when the way they linger on the shot, like Barrett was talking about, I was convinced that Grogu was going to like force catch them somewhere and like save these pig men, right? The only reason I thought that is because immediately before the scene, we were like introduced that Grogu is on this planet. So it's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
so okay, he's going to come and help them. It's like, okay, well, I guess he's not going to help yet.
No, they're dead as
Like,
hell.
No,
They're
he had
dead.
to finish eating his mud worms.
The other moment that I thought was like really brutal, and it was very brief, but the Rancor is like climbing around the buildings and he has the like ship in his hand. He's picked up some kind of space car and
Oh, it's an
chucks it
RX
at
70.
the
It's an
entire
RX
group.
75. It's a Luke speeder.
And
Yeah.
chucks it at the entire group.
Yeah,
And
you
like
know
it
what?
goes just over their heads, but I'm like, that would have destroyed like 30 people.
You know what?
Like,
They would have
like
fucking
bloody mess.
deserved it after shooting at him
shit.
repeatedly like a
I do
bunch of
agree.
assholes.
I did feel bad for the Rancor.
Like,
I
did
definitely
they
in that
just
moment when they all
forget, like,
turned so quickly.
Oh, hey, that's like, okay, yeah, it's on the loose. We got to deal with it. But let's also remember that Boba Fett was riding around on that thing like 2 minutes ago, and he saved
Yeah.
the day. Like, maybe he might be mad if we try to kill this thing. Like, it was
Everybody's
just so
like,
fucking
"Shoot it."
weird. Yeah.
I like
Let's
that.
go.
I like that Favreau wrote in a little moment where Din tries to ride the Rancor, and Can's just
He's like, nah.
everybody remember who was first.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Dude,
which,
I-
by the way, I want to say, how did we get 7 episodes into this series before seeing 2 dudes with jetpacks firing blasters at people from the sky? Come
I will
on.
say the jetpack action when they first took off the ground, them hovering around was so freaking awkward for me. The way it was just two men just kind of like hovering.
I thought it looked dope.
I want to see like jetpacks like shoot off of one building and land on another, but hovering around on a jetpack. This was the most
It never
awkward
looks cool.
jetpack action I've seen. And like we've seen some cool jetpack stuff in The Mandalorian. The two of them up there hovering around was so funny. I was laughing and like I enjoyed it. I have no complaints about that. It was so goofy to me.
I didn't think it looked goofy. I thought I get what you're saying. I think the camera work saved it a lot.
Yeah, I'm with that. Where I think it looks goofy, but I think that overall the coolness won out for me.
I can do that. Yeah.
Plus, we got the knee rocket.
Yes, we did.
Several times, and it was so
good.
cool.
Chekhov's knee rocket.
Great.
If you set up a knee rocket in 1983.
Yeah. It'll go off in 2022. I want to talk about Cad Bane.
Yeah,
And,
please.
What we got with yes, again, rest in peace, Cad Bane. What we got with him in this show overall, I do what you were saying earlier, Carboni. I do really agree with you of like the cool themes that they set up, especially if you're a Clone Wars watcher. Like Filoni, I think really treated Clone Wars watchers like well in this episode of being like, hey, like, you know that they were affiliated with each other. And I don't know if it was ever actually in an episode, but it is said that Bane took Boba under his wing a little bit and things like that. There
was a storyline that was supposed to happen originally in season 7 that was going to be all about Boba Fett and Cad Bane.
Yeah.
Before Clone Wars got canceled.
Yeah.
And then when they brought back 7, obviously. Yeah, when they brought back 7, obviously they had bigger things to tie up.
Yeah.
That was supposed to. They apparently have a history together.
Yeah, and so yeah, I love that they kind of address that in ways in this episode. But I think it's unfortunate that it's only this episode. Like I think Cad, like in retrospect, hindsight 2020. I think for a lot of people, I think Cad Bane should have been introduced in like the second episode, and I think they should have explained more to people who love the Mandoverse, and this was my question last week, right? Of like people who really are into the Mandoverse but have not been in the Filoniverse nearly as long. Like, do they care about Cad Bane showing up at the end of this episode? The answer is probably not. And then like when those themes get brought up in like that fucking awesome space cowboy showdown at the end, right? Where they're like just like they're in the middle of the town, it's deserted, they're on the street and they're about to have the shootout, and Bane is kind of dropping all of this stuff. I imagine people who are into just the Mandoverse are like, where the fuck is this coming from? And I think that's unfortunate storytelling for this specific bite-sized part of the story that they're trying to tell as a whole. And I just thought that was really unfortunate, and I think it could have helped, not even with that, but also the problems that we had throughout the series of like, all right, who's this force that he's facing off against? Who the fuck are the Pikes? Why do we care about the Pikes? They're not scary. Like, do more. And I think they could have done more if they had introduced Cad Bane earlier. Kind of teach or like reminds people who would watch the Clone Wars what their history were and why Bane is kind of a really cool foil to Boba Fett, especially where Boba Fett is now, and kind of explain that to new viewers who don't know who Cad Bane is. I thought that was really unfortunate.
And just to back you up there, I think there's like two examples of it even in this show. One being that Black Chrysanthemum and Boba's relationship feels a lot more believable and explained because we've just had him a couple more episodes. Like all it takes is just a little bit more time and
just a little bit
storytelling and like just little things like calling him Santo. It's like, cool, y'all know each other. And I believe that more than what Cad Bane does in this episode. That's essentially saying like, oh, hey, Boba, I've known you a long time. We're just supposed to be like, okay, cool. And literally it's just time for us being with the characters. But the bigger thing for me is the choice to not have Cad Bane be the one that killed the Tuskens. I think that's the one connection that could have just made it for Mandoverse only people. It all makes sense. It's like, oh, cool, you guys are tied together and this guy could be introduced late and killed off, but cool. At least that makes sense within the story they're telling in this show. This just kind of felt like a dude came out of nowhere, had a moment that they tried to act like it was a big moment, but it didn't feel like a big moment at all.
Here's my pitch, and tell me how you feel about this. This is not a show that's afraid of flashbacks, clearly. We're flashing back and we're seeing Boba Fett's redemption, but remember that we've never actually seen Boba Fett's descent, really. A little bit in the Clone Wars, right? Imagine 2 sets of flashbacks in the Bacta tank. young Boba Fett being trained by Cad Bane to be an angry killer,
Yes.
and an adult Boba Fett undoing that training to live among the Tuscans
Yeah.
Yes.
and have a peaceful
And then
life.
have Cad
Yes.
Bane be the one who takes that away
And-
from him. Like, Jesus. Like, that would have been fucking beautiful. And
If you're going to reference Sergio, like these spaghetti westerns,
Yeah.
if the man in the black hat is going to show up, you have to tell me what his connection is to the man in the white hat. Like, that's the way these westerns work. You have to you have to show me how they're the same,
Yeah.
and you have to show me how they're different. And you have to, like, that's what every showdown is.
Mhm.
You know, the showdown has like, there was still some emotional weight to that showdown because, well, we know this guy off the marshal, and it's like, well, we know the marshal's good, right?
Yeah.
And so we know that, like, and we know that Fennec, and like when Fennec says don't go up against this guy, we know that that means something. But these are things that these are just things that we know in the moment, like that emotional connection, because we didn't get that story of Boba and Cad Bane. We never got it. It got canceled, you know? So not only are you talking to fans, you're talking to super fans of super fans.
Yeah.
And I want to see more of that story. You
Mhm.
know? I think something that we're all kind of alluding to is this is the first episode where we saw Boba Fett being Boba Fett, right? And it's weird because we should have seen that earlier, and we should have seen him grow out of it in this episode.
Right.
You know what I
I
mean?
see
A
that.
little bit. Like, we should have started with a more with a more villainous Boba Fett taking over, a
Mhm.
more revenge-minded Boba Fett taking over. When Cad Bane says, I knew you were a killer, it's
Yeah.
like, I haven't seen him do that shit, man. He's pretty
And
cool.
then he was right. I did love that he was right. I
Yeah.
loved that moment. I really
Yeah, but
loved that moment that they didn't shy away from it and have him like be the like bigger, better person in it. And they were like, no, he's gonna kill him, and he has to.
His
And that is
emotional
probably
growth
the
is he
better
kills
thing.
him with the stick of his family instead of a
Yeah.
gun.
Yeah. Honestly, I was so into it. I know
Yeah.
that it was the like less growth choice, but I liked the flaw to it. And I think that it broke that mold a little bit of what you expect to happen. In that moment, I was like, oh, come on, don't back down from doing the thing, because like then he got to you. Then he did it. Because that's exactly what he was trying to do. And he didn't. And Boba Fett was just like, nope.
Yeah.
I had honestly forgotten about the Tuscan staff, so it was actually kind of a cool moment when he
Yeah,
pulled
that
it
was
out.
like, because I was like, oh shit, like Mando's gonna come in and save that. Like someone is gonna like kind of not fully Deus Ex Machina, but someone's gonna kind of like come in and alter this fight a little bit, even though I
Yeah.
don't think that would have been as well earned. So like, I thought, you know, the Chekhov stick was used really well, and you know, you make us forget about it long enough that like when it comes back, you're like, oh fuck, right, that's awesome. And the way he used it as he was taught to, like to perfection, was really really cool.
I do want to say in that moment, the Cad Bane's metal plate, like his metal plate with like the clicky that he has,
Yeah.
just to speak to like what we didn't get to see, that metal plate was from the story that was canceled. Boba Fett and Cad Bane have had a shootout before.
Yep.
And he injured Cad Bane enough to where he has to wear like a Darth Vader breathing plate for the rest of his life. And so like they've got all this animosity towards each other, and like they linger on the shot of the plate. And I was like, oh, cool, the plate. And then I was like, wait, who are they lingering on that for? Me? Are they lingering on that for me?
Yeah.
How many people know about the plate?
Yeah. Again, it would have done so much to add him in the, you know, second episode as opposed to the second to last episode. There's, like I said at the beginning of this episode, I think this entire show was really messy. Still did some really cool things for me. I am excited for where we go next, where all of the, like, I'm cool with where all the characters are at now, and I'm interested to see like what the story is moving forward, because we know in the grand scheme of things what they want to build to in this new Mando, Filoni, Favreau verse. And so I'm excited to see the steps that we take to get there. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of missteps, and Cad Bane, it was one of those things where like people were asking me like, oh, like how does it feel to like be like, you were given Cad Bane and then he was taken away. Like I don't mind that he died. I loved that for Boba's character, but I wish they just did a little bit more with for me.
And I want to say the characterization of Cad Bane, and of course Corey's performance. Corey's been playing Cad Bane now for 20
Killing
years.
it.
So
On strength of performance alone, I don't see how anybody could be unhappy with this being the end of Cad Bane's story. I think it worked really, really well for Cad Bane.
I agree.
Good for Cad Bane. There were some other people that needed better endings in this show, but Cad Bane got a good one. I just want to say, I realized that before I felt a million people running into the comments. I said RX-75. I got the Gundam Unicorn mixed up with the X-34 land speeder. There's a lot of dumb shit in my head. Nothing important. A lot of dumb, unimportant shit, and I just want to say I mixed that up.
Thank you, Anthony. We were all so embarrassed.
I appreciate you all not bringing it up and making fun of me for it.
No, I was actually running to the comments. I was pre-typing.
You were being the bigger people, and I love that.
Yeah.
But talking about machinery, I did like to see the Scorpionic Annihilators made canon. The big boy Scorpion.
What are those originally from?
Yeah, so those were original. Those were original drawings that Doug had done for the Droidicas, but bigger. Like, if they use these, then they probably also have these. And they're in Legends canon. They were used a few times in in Clone Wars era stuff. But I love that. I do love that this team is using this as their personal playground to bring a lot of Legends stuff back in ways that make sense. It feels to me like the first couple of years after DC Comics does a timeline reboot and you're like, oh, you get to do everything new again. Those first couple of years are always fun, and I hope they keep that energy. But also, I just love the working in of prequel era stuff all throughout this series.
Yeah.
Seeing the two design languages mix and match and meld, and just the story it tells of this galaxy over time and the rise and fall. It's nice to see all that stuff. It was cool that they brought in something that already existed to be the big bad,
We talked about how things left off for certain characters. I think it was a tweet to a reply from someone, but one of the funniest things was someone was expecting Boba and his gang to almost like jump up and cheer and like freeze frame on them the way that like we kind of like leave Boba and his gang, and that was just like kind of a like weird. All right, like, we're going to have some funny banter of like, oh, he gets a melon, we don't get a melon and stuff. It's like,
okay, that's a choice.
This is a choice, but again,
I think that guy improv'd. I think that guy was making the most. Look up who that actor is, everybody. I want to look him up.
Yeah.
Because he had like
3 days on set. Because if that was a written line, they would have called that, I forget what the actual fruit is, but they would have named it the actual fruit.
So when they hand it, somebody does say, do you want a Meiluron?
Yeah, Meiluron.
So it was mentioned, but like, I want to know who that guy was because I'm looking him up because he made the most of his time on set. He's like, I got 3 days in a Star Wars and I'm using it. I am going to improv with fucking Fennec Shand. I'm going to talk to a Wookiee. I'm going to spin and shoot my gun. I'm here. I may be fired next week, but for right now, I'm here. And I love that guy.
And I want to be like, I like the build up of that scene, or like him just like walking through the town, the people kind of like respecting and looking to Boba as a leader. I thought that was cool. And like them giving him like Meilurons and being like stoked that they were the ones to give it to Boba and all this stuff. It was really just that last shot where they like kind of like pan away. There's a lot of like interesting like shot and editing choices, especially like really quick going back to the killing of Cad Bane, where he's kind of like rageful like right after he did it, and there's like all of these weird like kind of dissolve cuts in between. That was a choice. All right.
Robert Rodriguez.
That was definitely an editing choice I would not have made. I would have loved to use all those shots, but I would have found a better way to transition between them. There was just
Come
like
on,
that
man. Star
weird...
Wars will use a clock wipe if it needs to.
I know,
Yeah,
but
right?
at least the clock wipe, like a clock wipe makes more sense in the framing of Star Wars than just a crossfade in between the same shot,
Yeah.
What I did like about the ending. Oh, please, I don't want to cut you off.
Oh, yeah. It was like the way that they kind of like just go away from that group, and then like the way that they leave it off with Mando and Grogu, I loved that bit, but I thought again it was like kind of like a little less interesting than what they decided to tease in the post credits, where I was just like, okay, so this is your final scene. I love this bit. It's a funny scene. It reminds me of like when I try to talk to my dog and I'm like, no, Lulu, it's not time to go OUT yet. I'm spelling it because she's right there and I know she'd be stoked if I actually said it. So it's like, and I love that bit where he's
3 weeks away from knowing how to spell out.
Yeah, and like he's tapping on the glass like, go fast, Dad, go fast. And I love that bit, but I was just like, that's your last scene in the book of Boba Fett. All right.
Yeah. It should have gone from you would think it would go from that to the scene of Boba and Fennec walking and give them their ending.
Yeah, like there was
no
feeling of like actual closure in
I
like,
would
but I
have
think
Mando
once
scene
again-
in after credits. I think that
Yeah.
Mando scene could have just been the mid credits or after credit scene where it's just like, all right, and one more cute little bit to get
Yeah,
you excited and remind
exactly.
you Mando's coming. Here you go.
Yeah, show the marshal before the credits, and then I loved it. I want you to know that I loved it.
Same.
This whole series has been messy, but there's been a lot of good and bad in it. There's been a lot of. I'm excited for what it's trying to do for Star Wars. I feel an excitement about it the same way I did, and this is going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, but about The Last Jedi, where it was like, I want to throw a pebble into the pond that's going to start ripples that will change Star Wars and build Star Wars for the next 40 years. And I know you didn't see that as much, Tim. I know you mentioned that, but I think it was kind of a cavalcade of guest characters and guest locations and things like that, because they are thinking of it all as one cohesive series, and they're doing it as an experiment. And it's going to be a little messy along the way. I think that's what we're going to see over the next couple of years. Is it may be a little messy.
See,
But I like it as like, okay, now no matter what you tune in for Star Wars every week, we can check in on any of these characters at any time. And it feels messy within the bounds of a television series, but as like a weekly viewing event that will go on forever, I can see what they're trying to set up, even though they stumbled this time around.
very much like the Clone Wars itself as a show.
Yes, the Clone Wars was very much like that. It's like one of my favorite episodes of the Clone Wars is literally about Saige Snoodles. You remember that episode where she turns out to be the femme fatale at the end?
Yeah. Remember when
It's a
Jar
noir
Jar Binks
story.
and what's his face hang out for an entire episode, and it's just like, why?
Yeah.
We had
Just like,
entire
what's
Jar Jar
going-
Binks arcs.
Yeah.
What's going on in Star Wars this week? That's what they're going for.
Yeah.
And it hurts. I think it hurts when you hear this is the Boba Fett show and people have been waiting for the Boba Fett show for a long
Yeah.
time, and you don't get the part of Boba Fett's life or the characterization of Boba Fett that you really wanted, and you don't even get maybe an entire show that's just about Boba Fett. And I think that was some sneaky marketing, and I think they're going to get some blowback for that, for sure, when it comes to critical reviews of this show.
Mhm.
But I like what they're trying to do.
See, with that, like my biggest problem with Last Jedi has and always will be that it just left no room
enough
to
audience.
go for one more movie in the trilogy. Like the fact that there was only 2 hours of storytelling left after where they left off at Last Jedi. I love what Rian Johnson did in so many ways. I just don't think it was the right time and there wasn't a vision. And that kind of left us with where we were at with Rise of Skywalker. And I kind of feel like with the Filoniverse and with what you're talking about of it just being kind of like episodic that's just happening and there's little stories everywhere. That's great. I just wish that the quality to quantity balance was a little tipped more towards the quality. And then we can say it about any of the shows where it's just like there's a lot of filler. There's a lot of we can't just recommend anyone go out and you should watch Clone Wars. It's like, no, well, actually, you need to do this, this, and this. Well, you should do this. Well, actually, blah,
That's
blah,
why
blah.
I have
And
my
don't
watch
like,
order.
But I don't
Yeah,
like
you
that we're
gotta
at
have
a
a-
point now.
If
that
you're
we're-
jumping into Clone Wars, have a viewing guide handy, please.
But
Yeah.
we're already here. We're 3 shows in. We're like 2-3 years into this, and we're already at a point where it's like, okay, Book of Boba Fett, you don't need to watch this and this, but watch episodes 5 and 6, and And I think that's just not a place that I wish we were somewhere better. And like I'm going to be here watching every week. And what I will say, and this pains me, but it's super clear that they care about Ahsoka and they care about Mandalorian because they are their characters. They are Filoni's characters. They are Favreau's characters. That is who they have to play with. And they're like, Luke Skywalker, Boba Fett, here's what y'all get. We're going to write them in ways that we're just going to make all the people that want to see more of them not want to see more of them anymore.
Oh,
So
I don't know. I
more
think that's a
about-
mischaracterization of Jon Favreau, but okay.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
that's
let you-
not how I walked away feeling about Luke.
They're trying to put him in a place where it's just like to the people that don't like the decisions
Well,
made. We're getting into those decisions earlier, so every time that he shows up, it makes me like Luke less.
Well-
Interesting.
So it's
I don't think that was the intentions.
Yeah, I think
They're
I think-
clearly trying to get Ahsoka to be people's favorite Jedi.
Well, because here's the thing: you can only use Luke so much. Luke, like we talked about this earlier,
But
like
why?
in this because
God,
it's
Luke.
because
we did Luke.
because Thor has to fly away before you fight the robot. Because Superman can't be there for the first 2 acts of the Justice League. Because if he is, he would just punch whoever the Justice League needs to punch.
And what's wrong with Ahsoka being someone's favorite Jedi? Because at the end of the day, if every story we tell bows down to Luke being the best boy forever, what's the point of telling more Jedi stories?
Well, we've gotten
If
more
we
Ahsoka
cannot-
stories than Luke stories at this point.
Well, no. We've not gotten
By-
more Ahsoka stories than Luke. I mean, if
In
you can go
canon?
to the animated series, sure,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, that's what we're
But-
talking about.
Well, yes and no. I mean, they are separate in many ways.
I would say
but
like the core journey and growth of her as a character and the core episodes of like her journey. I think we still have gotten more Luke at this point.
Yeah, and I mean,
the
if
other
you
thing
want
is
to
Luke was
measure
wrong.
it by actual minutes on screen time, sure, but
Right.
like there's a
But,
lot
like,
of
Luke
lot of
isn't
filler
Star
in Clone
Wars.
Wars. Yeah.
Luke isn't
Luke was-
Star Wars, or if Luke is Star Wars, then we have to stop Star Wars. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
we can't
because
continue
Luke-
on the same character forever.
I think
Luke
you
is
guys
a
are
character
misunderstanding my
who's-
point. Is I'm hopeful that at some point soon, maybe we're gonna move on to Ahsoka is just gonna be what I want Luke to be in these shows. And
Yeah.
it's just like we're moving on to that. I want that to come sooner than we're at now, because it kind of feels like we're in this weird place where they're putting away some of their toys so we can play with new toys.
You gotta. I think you have to for storytelling, and you have to keep the story fresh and keep the galaxy fresh. I think you can bring in these characters and be like, oh shit, Luke is here, but you want Luke to feel special. You want Luke showing up to feel like a big deal. Because if Luke was there week to week, I would not feel as special about Luke. Like Luke is the toy that you really do have to keep on the shelf. You want to keep Luke in mint condition. You know what I mean? You don't take Luke out of the box very often because you care about Luke a lot.
And the more you use Luke, especially with like talking about budgeting, the more really slow speeder chases we get as well.
Well, and that's because they refuse to admit that Sebastian Stan exists. And that's a
what I'm
problem.
saying.
There you go. That's all you
And I
have to
think
do.
that's the other reason. Like, I would love to see a young Cad Bane or a young Boba Fett and Cad Bane series out of this, like a real dark inversion of Lone Wolf and Cub. You know what I mean? Like an anti-Mando. I would love to see that, but I don't think we will because they want a digital people as opposed to recasting people. And I just don't want to see a CG 12-year-old Daniel Logan. You know what I mean? Like, I love Daniel Logan and I want him to be in everything that he wants to be in, but also like, if you're going to have a kid, Boba Fett, please have an actual kid.
I can't believe that shot of him on Camino seeing the Slave One go away. Like, we saw it so many times, and then just that was just it. It was just like, oh yeah, we're never gonna really reference his childhood again.
Yeah.
I mean, that I felt like that was, and even in those moments when it was happening, like I think the first second of when it first happened, I was like, oh shit, and then it kind of goes away, and I had to think about like why they did that, and then they did it a second time, and it was like I think that was more for, you know, like kind of honing in on the theme of family and what that is in the show, and what that actually means more so than like actual plot flashback. Again, I don't think that was like utilized in the best way, but yeah, that's kind of like where I'm at with that.
Y'all have any closing thoughts on this as a whole? The end of our journey. Go for it, Sage.
I personally didn't mind where we left off with Boba's story. Boba's story. Sorry.
Boba.
I enjoyed the moment that we left them in of this is not the thing we wanted. This is everything we've worked up to this point. He doesn't know if he's the good guy or the bad guy. We don't know if he's the good guy or the bad guy, but we do know that he's trying. He has given into instincts like, actually killing Cad Bane. So he does land in this kind of neutral space of, okay, the thing that I thought I wanted and the way that I thought I would be the good guy, I am not. It does not suit me. So I like the idea of leaving this kind of band of people that we've put together between the mods, Fennec, Boba Fett, Black Chrysanthemum, in this group of people that are now, in theory, going to explore the universe and figure out actually where they belong and actually what their kind of place is and all of that. And I enjoy those questions. I like to be left with that of what other like weird true neutral thing are you going to go do in this universe now that you know that Tatooine is kind of done and the cowboy can handle it. You can move on to your next weird search for internal justice. And I enjoy that.
Any other closing thoughts?
I'm excited to see what show we get next. I hope, if the rumors are to be believed, I hope Kenobi is real close. And I'm excited to see more Star Wars. And I'm also excited to see where Mando and where Boba Fett and where handsome space cowboy Timothy Oliphant fit into the whole building up of Ahsoka, Ezra, Grogu, and eventually Thrawn. I just want to see. I'm fascinated to see how it all comes together.
Please, just Thrawn. Please, just Thrawn. Live action Thrawn.
We're getting it. The fact that they put his name out there in season 2 of Mando, we're getting him.
Live action Thrawn with that long flowing romance novel cover hair that he had in that Marvel comic.
Fuck yeah.
Just hot
Fuck
Thrawn.
yeah.
Just
Hot
Thrawn.
Yeah, it's funny because this is something that like Greg and I talk about when we talk about DC Comics a lot, which is like, I like where we are. I don't know if I like how we got there as much as I like where we are. I think this was a fun series. I think it's trying some stuff. It's throwing things up against the wall and seeing what sticks. And I feel like we need to afford Star Wars a little bit more room to do that. I think other franchises get that space in a way that Star Wars doesn't sometimes. And like Saige says, I like where this crew is. We have a few good crews that are out there now, right? Like we've got the Fallen Order crew. Like I like that they're out there. We've got this Boba Fett crew. I like that they're out there. I like that we're building up this new canon of characters that can be there for us in a bunch of different shows for the next 20, 30 years. And I'm excited that we can check in with them all anytime. And we got to be so close to Afra and 000. If we got to be so close to Afra and 000, and that's going to be my day.
Let us know in the comments below what would make your day in Star Wars. Until next time, I love you all. Goodbye.